Hello and welcome to The Debate, presented jointly in the European Parliament in Brussels by Europarl TV and NOVATV from the Balkans, with me, Paul Anderson.
And me, Borian Jovanovski. We'll be discussing the challenges, setbacks, successes, even though sometimes they are hard to see, of the EU's enlargement towards the Western Balkans. The new European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker, he said, no new members under his watch, but the process rumbles on anyway.
With us in the studio are Ivo Weigel from Slovenia, a Liberal MEP, and Eduard Kukan from Slovakia, who's a member of the European People's Party. A warm welcome to you both.
And from the Socialists, Miltijadis Kirkos. And from the University of Graz, Florian Biber, who is also the coordinator of the Balkan in Europe Policy Advisory Group project of European Funds for Balkans.
Okay, let's start off with you, Florian, and sort of set the scene, because the Balkans isn't often in the news headlines these days. Today we have progress reports from all 6 aspirant Balkans countries: Serbia, Montenegro, former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, Bosnia, Kosovo and Albania. If it's possible, can you give us a pencil sketch of what, in your view, the biggest advances are in the accession process, and also what the biggest obstacles are?
Well, we have 2 countries which are in talks, Serbia and Montenegro, and that is certainly a big progress, that there is a continuous enlargement process going on and the talks really matter. But then we have about 3 countries, I would say, which face serious problems. One is Bosnia-Herzegovina for internal problems, political blockades. There were elections recently, and as a result we don't see much progress towards the European Union and reforms for that matter. We have Kosovo, which has the challenge that it's not recognized by 5 EU member states, and that eventually blocks its membership to the EU down the road, although there are many other internal problems. It's not had a government for months. And then finally Macedonia as well, which has a name dispute unresolved with Greece, and which also constitutes an obstacle and has resulted in a, I would say, increasingly authoritarian tendency within the country. And then we have a regional picture, a picture of countries which are in many ways see EU moving away from them. And as a result, elites are less and less committed about EU enlargement. You get more and more sound bites, more and more signals saying that they're not that interested in enlargement anymore. And you have a kind of a rise of authoritarianism, not dictatorship, but just governments which behave not very democratic, which reduce media freedoms, and that really becomes a problem increasingly.
Let's use the case study of my country, Macedonia. 6 recommendations to start the negotiation for membership, and which are 6 clear encouragement to reform and to implement the European values. Paradoxically, we see the setback, as was said by Commissioner Füle when he presented the progress report. What's the problem of the EU efforts to encourage the process of reform in Macedonia and to implement European values? Mr. Weigel?
Well, first of all, we have a serious problem with the non-functioning parliament in Macedonia. So I think it is the major obstacle for Macedonia themselves, but also for us who are observing how the process of rapprochement to European Union is progressing. And of course there are also in the last report there are some shortcomings which have been noticed, like corruption is still there, and media, the journalists have the problem with the media legislation and the practices in concerning the work of the journalists. Then there are still open questions concerning the Ohrid agreement, the relations between the nations with Macedonia. But I would say it is not proper just to talk about the shortcomings. Macedonia has made great progress concerning economic situation, very encouraging data about the growth, about the employment. the rate of unemployment has fallen in last couple of years from almost 40% to 28%. So overall picture of the country is not as bad as it looks on the first
But we are talking about the statement of Mr. Full and Mr. Kukan, who said there is an obvious backside of the reform processes. So what's the problem for EU to encourage this process of reforms, despite of the problem with the name issue?
I would agree that it must be a frustrating situation for the government and people of Macedonia. The fact that the progress reports for several consecutive years always said that Macedonia is fulfilling criteria, and Commission recommends to the Council to give the date for the beginning of the accession negotiations. European Parliament supports always this resolution, and as a result, in the conclusions of the Council is that Macedonia is doing what it can, and we shall return to this question after 6 months.
How does that square up with the experience and the reality on the ground, where people there speak of a more authoritarian, as Florian was pointing out, a more authoritarian tendency, where you're looking at pressure on media freedoms and on civil society? It's like two different narratives here, is it not?
Yes, I wanted to stress that this situation creates difficulties for the government to keep up the flames of integration of Macedonia to the European Union. Under this situation, it is really difficult. On the other hand, there are a lot of issues which government of Macedonia can do in delivering the reports, in addressing the issue of freedom of media and all these other things. Political boycott of the parliament, it's a very damaging thing, and it's occurring in Macedonia, and it also damages the general image. But I would tend to agree with Mr. Weigel, with my colleague, that generally Macedonia is not as bad as it is usually portrayed.
Okay, let's move on to that name question and bring in you, Miltijadis Kirkos. Do you think that it should be the European Union or the member states of the European Union who should act as an honest broker in resolving this issue between Greece and the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, which is what the European Union and the UN describe former Macedonia as? Do you think it should act as an honest broker rather than let the two countries sort out their problems themselves, which they appear incapable of doing up to this point?
The whole process of the enlargement is to help the states overcome their difficulties and expand the rule of law, the freedom, the fundamental freedoms, and also to create better relations with their neighbors. As we see, the problem of the name is not a problem that can be questioned as whether Macedonia is much worse than before or is better than before. The question of the name is very clear. In my opinion, former Yugoslavic Republic of Macedonia, as is the official name, must choose a name that makes it very clear that there is no confusion between that part of the world and the neighbor countries. So it must be let's say, I'm not the one to propose names, but the name must be like a geographical name that can be very clear to which part of Europe.
Okay, that's the Greek position. But this problem has proved intractable for many, many years. Who is
this problem from time to time is used because there are so many problems that can be solved, and there are problems that have to work on solving. The problem with the name is very clear with the relation with a European country, with Greece. So Greece's opinion is that the issue of the name is a European issue about a European country and a neighbor that it is in the process of getting accepted into the Union. We are totally agree that the place of former Yugoslavic Republic of Macedonia, together with the rest of the West Balkans, are in the European Union through a process that makes these countries to be in competence with the European laws.
Mr. Kirkos, why not to allow Macedonia to start the negotiation and then to give a chance to resolve this problem of the name issue during the process of the negotiation, and to have to resolve this issue once, just before entry in the European Union? Maybe it will, the process of negotiation as such is going to encourage more the whole process of resolving the
with my
name issue.
colleagues, and as we saw in the Bosnian results, and as we saw in the tensions that erupt in the football grounds, nationalism is running rampant in the Balkans. So I'm not sure that this maybe that you told us, maybe this will lead to the correct direction. In my opinion, the issue of the name is used as a way of getting forces between getting forces behind a nationalist idea. If there was not that idea, then there wouldn't be any problem of choosing a name. So taking the name out of the discussion is not the correct way to solve problems between neighboring countries.
Can I just put that same question to the rest
Yes,
of our panel here? Do you agree with that?
I would friendly disagree with my colleague. I think that it makes absolutely no sense to prevent Macedonia to start negotiations. I think the really European solution for this stalemate would be to come with the new dynamics. And dynamics means start of the negotiation. And I also think that once Macedonia would start the negotiation, the mood in the country would change. And they would be more oriented to the future than to the past. So I think this would be the right move. And the cause of the general frustrations shown by the opinion polls in the last time, where the people really care less and less for the European Union and European future, shows that some new dynamic should be introduced. And then lately I would say it is not very in the sense of a modern European art of solving the problems, then that we have two countries there just in their defense position, instead of enter in the pragmatic and kind of tolerant debate how to solve a common problem.
Florian, in the interest of the time, yes, let's go to Bosnia now. 90 years of the Dayton Agreement, and Bosnia is still an open question. The perspective of Bosnia is still not clear. What's the problem with Bosnia? And again, the leverage of the European Union to resolve the problems.
Right. Well, partly it's the institutional setup of Bosnia, which is creating elites which are not accountable in many ways. So elections don't resolve the problem because essentially everybody's in power somewhere in Bosnia. So you can't really throw out politicians as easily and punish them for not governing you well. And we see this, that the elections in October didn't really bring about a whole large-scale change of politics in Bosnia. The other issue is, again, the European Union has been using conditionality too early, too harshly. The Sejdić-Finci case about changing the Bosnian constitution is important, but it was seen as a condition for Bosnia to apply for membership. And this is, I think, a problem. It's similar in the case of the dispute between Greece and Macedonia. If the hurdles are too high too early on, the motivation of political elites to do reforms isn't there. If you feel your country is going to join the European Union in 15 years, when you're long time out of office, what is your motivation to pursue this agenda?
Edward Kukan, sort of give us a balance sheet, if you will, on the situation in Bosnia. As Florian says, we've just had elections, and the situation 19 years after Dayton looks very much like it was one day after Dayton. It was hoped that the federation and the different ethnic entities would come together more closely within Bosnia and create a model which was against the way things had been during the program of ethnic cleansing and during the war. Has that happened at all?
Yes, it didn't work like that, but I want to stress that after the elections, last elections, I still think that there is a ray of hope for the country, because it's clearly falling back in the process. It's lagging behind all other countries in the region. But recently there are several meaningful initiatives how to correct this. I mean, the joint letter of the Foreign Minister of Germany and the UK, which contained some new, very original ideas how to change the situation, and some other initiatives. And now I think they are going to be streamlined into one position of the whole EU. Friday this week, on the 5th of December, Commissioner Hahn and High Rep Mogherini are traveling to Sarajevo. So I think that this is a chance. Now is the chance for the political elite of Bosnia to show that they are interested in the European future of their countries, and they should use this moment, because if this moment is lost, I don't think anything positive for the country can happen.
Mr. Weigel, Mr. Kirkos, we see German initiative. It's a German initiative. And again, the question about the EU credibility. Could we expect that EU could do something as a whole and not a national member states, maybe with the support of United States, to see the efficiency of the diplomatic action?
I think that Europe should be more ambitious. The European Union should try to come up with some common plan, with some common initiative. And I think that High Representative Mogherini is showing this will and interest, and she has the knowledge. Now it is up to how much of initiative the member states and their ministers will allow her, and what are the global interests on stake. So, but I think that, and I will stop with saying this, I don't think that the Dayton framework allows really to reform, to modernize the Bosnian and Herzegovinian society. I think that after 25 years almost of a completely new situation, the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina are mature to take over the responsibility, and also the political elite. It is a time maybe to change the political elite, but it only can be done on democratic elections. But we don't have it in the situation where you have 30 parliaments and the country divided and atomized in so many entities. It doesn't work. Dayton Agreement was good to stop the war. It is not a framework to build up a modern state.
And Mr. Kirkos, if you look at the results of the elections and see the consolidation of the entrenched positions that were first established under Dayton, I mean, what hope do you think there is for the future, or what pathway out of these elites and out of this existing system do you think exists?
I'm not an optimist that I can see any way out in Bosnia. The entrenchments, as you refer to them, are very strong, and the position there is, in my opinion, very, very difficult. That is not the case for the rest of the Western Balkans. I would agree with my colleague in this point, not on the others that we discussed earlier, that Mrs. Merkel's initiative is on the right direction, and Europe must have a unique decision on that. But we must not forget that these countries, as Professor explained, are already in a way to the Balkans, either by being members to be, or in having specific problems to solve before becoming members. So it is a process that must be encouraged, but we must be definitely sure there are ways, European ways. It's not for being in the European Union, it's for their own good. These countries are not supporting the freedom of the press because the European Union tells them to do so. They are not stopping the boycott of the parliament, as it happens in the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, because Europe has to tell them so, because of their own political interests. And they must solve these problems, and then we have so many obstacles to overcome, but we will overcome them together.
Again, about the EU leverage, let's go to Serbia, Mr. Biber. What about Serbia? We saw recently open dilemma in Serbia, whether to go towards East or to stay with Europe. The same dilemma was raised in Montenegro recently by the Mr. Đukanović. We have two countries just started negotiation, and they are in the very beginning of this process. They are opening the dilemma whether to stay with Europe or to go otherwise. What's the problem?
Well, I think it's partly a gamble of elites. They're saying, if you don't treat us better, we're going to look to Russia. I don't think Russia is at the moment offering...
Treat better means what? I mean, you have a negotiation process.
Right.
What else?
Well, I think, of course, the elites personally are worried about the Sanader effect, that they might end up in jail at the end of the negotiations. And the other problem is that they think also that the process maybe not going fast enough, or maybe being too critical in some aspects. I mean, I think statements like that of Milo Đukanović and also statements by the Serbian government are suggesting that they want to keep good ties with Russia because that is popular in their countries, and to put pressure on the European Union. I don't think Russia is a real alternative in the region. It's not a real player. It can't really have the influence. I mean, let's not forget the Western Balkans are surrounded by the European Union, surrounded by NATO. They are an island in the European Union. But Russia can create trouble if it wants to do so. And of course, it depends on the European Union. I mean, it's a game the European Union has to lose. If the European Union basically says no enlargement, or enlargement one day far, far away, well, then of course Russian influence will increase. But it's only at that moment that Russia really has a role to play.
And do you see really that Russia, you know, it's up to the Serbs to manage this process themselves, and that Russia is just going to stand back and watch to see how it evolves? Or is it going to be far more active in Serbia and in Montenegro and with the Bosnian Serb Republic? I
mean, I think it will be more active there because it has a certain degree of sympathy in parts of the political actors. But again, we saw with South Stream, there's a limitation of what Russia can do if it has the opposition of the European Union. And let's not forget, Russia also has good ties to a number of EU member states. So it's not really that it's only in the Western Balkans the case. So I would be cautious to overestimate the role of Russia. It depends a lot on what political elites choose and what they think is convenient for their own popularity.
But the question for the three MPs, Balkan looks like becoming a battlefield of the Russian and EU interest. Do you agree, Mr. Kukan?
No, it's overstatement, but I think there is another issue which should be mentioned in this connection, and it is very bad economic situation of the countries, especially Serbia, when they really need some financial assistance in order to deal with the everyday issues. And Russia is ready to do that. We are not. Let's face it. If they ask for some financial assistance, EU does not have it, and Russia does. So Russia is skillfully using also this moment, and we shouldn't forget it. I agree that Russia is not such a big player like Professor said, but the countries, I think that I believe the political leadership of Serbia and Montenegro that they sincerely want to have their countries in the EU. And I think also we should tell them very clearly that to be best friends with Russia and to be best friends with the EU, it's not a sustainable policy, and they have to make a choice.
Ivo Weigel?
Well, I disagree here with my colleague Kukan. Usually we agree, but this time I don't think that this kind of relation to Russia is a long-term situation in Europe. I think we should come slowly with Russia also to the normal terms. We should work on the open problems. We should insist that Russia is not allowed to violate the international law, should withdraw from the occupied territories, but in the long term, I don't accept that Europe is building a wall against Russia. And I think also that the countries who have had traditional ties to Russia for historical, religious and other reasons will keep having these kind of relations also in the future. And this is nothing bad.
And what about on the question of Kosovo? Because if we stretch back our memories, it was Russian peacekeepers who barreled their way through Serbia into Kosovo as the first peacekeepers, in effect, in Kosovo in 1999 or 2000, I forget exactly which year. Does Russia have a capacity in its potential leverage with the money that Mr. Kukan was saying is potentially available to influence Serbia on the critical Kosovo question?
Well, I think Russia has always leverage also in the Middle East and elsewhere. It is a superpower and it will stay a superpower. So therefore I am against this kind of taking it as relations forever. We are now on the critical verge of our relations. We should work on it, but Russia will have to, we will need Russia also sometimes when it will be about the serious problems to solve. But I definitely don't believe that orientation towards Russia might change the pro-European orientation for either of Serbia or Montenegro. The public opinion, they might be critical sometimes, but the orientation is towards Europe. They want it, and the political elites want it, and independently of some statements which are made for opportunistic reasons. But the pro-European orientation of Western Balkans is clear. It is not to be changed.
The question for direct neighbors of the Western Balkans, northern neighbors Slovenia and southern neighbor Greece. What's your point of view? What do you think? How Greece and Slovenia use their position to spread, to promote European values in the Western Balkans?
Well, Slovenia was trying to do it in the past. I will cut it short, not to take too much of the time. But Slovenia is too small really to be a major player in Balkans, and we have been dealing with our own problems. We are on the friendly terms with everybody there, and a lot of our expertise is there. So the governmental and non-governmental assistance to the different stages of negotiation, preparation for negotiation, etc. But strategically, I don't think that Slovenia can play more a role than it is playing now.
Mr. Kirkos?
If I remember correctly, in 2004 it was in Greece, in Salonika, that took place the first...
2003.
2003, the start of the enlargement of Europe to the Western Balkans.
European perspective for the Western Balkans.
Yes. So, yes, 2004 were the Olympics and everything results on that. So, in my opinion, our position has not changed since. We are totally in favor of enlargement of the European Union for the Balkans. We want our neighbors to be in the European Union because we don't want to have borders with countries outside the Union. But we must not forget, because it's not only the Western Balkans, it's also the Eastern Balkans, if we can say that for Turkey. Turkey, and to come back to the discussion, Turkey has started negotiations for so many years, and we see that some things go forward and some things go backward. So it's not just the European perspective. The countries by themselves have to work hard to follow the rule of the law, the fundamental rights, the freedom of the press, the judicial integrity. So these are the rules. We are we want to be very helpful, but between our countries, and just to mention that, not that I want to impose anything on anyone, the formal name of our northern country is the former Yugoslavic Republic of Macedonia. That's the UN name. Okay. So I'm not using it. But to go back to the question, yes, we really want these countries to get into the Union, and we can do everything that passes through our hands, except saying that one country has the name of one of our regions.
Okay, good. The point is well made, Florian. I know that you wanted to enter into, maybe you can hold that thought for the next question. We're going to go round the table with a concluding thought on the Balkans as a whole. Just 30 seconds each. We'll start off with you, Mr. Kukan. What is the price of failure in the enlargement process or the engagement process with the Balkans? Just 30 seconds. What do we stand to lose if we get it wrong?
Price will be very high, very difficult, because we want to speak about the Europe one and the whole, and without the integration of the Western Balkan countries, we cannot say that we achieved our goal, uniting Europe. That would be a very big price.
Okay, Florian?
Yeah.
Well, I think the enlargement has been the big success story of the European Union. It's been really, 2004, 2007, despite all of the shortcomings, it's been able to increase in size, in numbers of countries, transform the countries with all the difficulties. And it would be a main disaster if basically the European Union would fail to complete this process and also basically step away from its success story. And that, I think, is fundamental. And if the EU doesn't do it, somebody else will have influence in that region. There is no such thing as an empty region. And that, I think, will be negative, not just for the countries of the Western Balkans, but for the European Union. To have 7 small dictators in the European Union's immediate surroundings with economic crisis can hardly be in the interest of the European Union.
Yeah, how to stop the cheating each other, Europe pretending that enlarge and Balkans pretending that reform?
Well, I think that the process of enlargement is unavoidable. If you want a common Europe in the sense of a common market, but also the place of common values, etc., the enlargement should be finished with the inclusion of all European countries in European Union. Otherwise, there will be, as my friend Kukan said, a very, very high price to pay. We should not forget that enlargement and European integration is also a peace process, and as such it should be seen also in the future.
Okay.
That is my idea too. The price that we will pay is the price of people, of our neighbors, living in conditions and economically and in the domain of freedoms that are not for a European a member of the European geographic place. So the only way to move forward is through enlargement. The way we can do it is already written. We have just to follow the steps.
Thank you. Okay, that's all we have time for. I'm afraid. Many thanks to our guests for joining us, Greek MP Miltijadis Kirkos and Florian Biber from the University of Graz.
And Ivo Weigel from Slovenia and Edward Kukan from Slovakia. Many thanks indeed to everyone for joining us. And thanks to you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.